in paleontology here. He's now doing a postdoc at Yale, but he made the mistake of coming back to the museum to study callistopods, right? Yeah. And he happened to be sitting there when I walked in, and so he became one of our speakers. He flew down tonight. He said he had some problems with airports, but he made it. He made it. And he's going to talk to us tonight about biodiversity in the fossil record. Austin Hendy.
Dave, could you come and help me? Okay, so I'm a little bit frazzled. The odds were against me today getting here. I arrived at New Haven Airport this morning and got to the front of the line, and then US Airways computer system across the country crashed. And ended up leaving New Haven an hour later when they finally got their computers back up and going, and then spent another 3 hours in Philadelphia waiting for the plane to arrive. So it wasn't an easy process getting here, and then 5 minutes before I came down, the computer upstairs told me my PowerPoint talk was corrupt. So it came back to life, and I do have a talk to present. So last time I spoke to you, it was a bit of a biography of how I ended up being a paleontologist and my experiences as a student at UC. Tonight's presentation, it'll contain a few more stories, and it'll be moderately light on science. So I originally proposed talking about biodiversity in the fossil record, and I could certainly go into great details there. And I also proposed talking about how a little bit of creativity or imagination or daydreaming is also required when dealing with the fossil record. On the left, you see an iconic chart of biodiversity for the Phanerozoic, the last 500 million years. And on the right, you see modern biodiversity, as in photographs of marine environments. Now, the graph on the left is based on what we see in the field. The fossils, like we see in the Coke Formation, road cuttings around the Cincinnati area. And obviously, you've all been on those field trips. It doesn't look anything like the scene on the right. So there's a bit of a disparity there, a disjunct. And that's where the imagination or creativity comes in. And I spend a lot of time sort of going off into dreamland when I see fossils. That's the way I look at them, as I try and put the story back together about how the environments, like on the right, might have looked back in the Ordovician. Okay, so I just thought I might go back over a few things I said last time. Some people may remember that talk about being a graduate student at Cincinnati, and I had a few sort of lessons or morals along the way that, better or worse for parents out there, I put up on the screen. Travel was certainly the best education. Traveling around the world as a youngster, I learned a great many things. And ending up in Canada at one point in my life led me to go into paleontology. And in order to get there, I didn't listen to my parents, and I went off following my dreams, and ended up in the Badlands of Alberta, which is famous for their Cretaceous dinosaur fossils. And in doing so, spent several weeks hanging out with graduate students who just amazed me at the time with their knowledge and enthusiasm. And I learned how to get into paleontology, what I needed to do to become a graduate student, and eventually get a job in paleontology. And there's a few shots of some of the material I was working on. Okay, and during those trips I also bumped into a student from University of Calgary who told me about the great Carl Brett in the corner of the room here. And that ultimately led to me coming to UC and spending 5 great years here, being advised by Carl on the left, and Arnie Miller, and 5 great years of Arnie's troop of students as well. Okay, and as a graduate student, we did many field trips out west, Colorado, Utah, and other places around the country. And again, traveling to see the rocks that we learn about in the classroom is just a critical aspect. Some of our field trips went to more exotic places, and Carl knows where this is in the Bahamas, where we went down submarines to look at how living organisms were degrading on the seafloor and the processes early processes, I guess, of fossilization. Okay, now it wasn't all fun and games. I did some serious work on the way. My dissertation at UC looked at New Zealand fossils of Cenozoic age, so the last 65 million years or so. In particular, as I show on the slide there, the Oligocene to the present day, the last 30 or 40 million years. And I was very much interested in how communities of organisms, like on my opening slide that I showed, how they changed from the time, and how did this reflect changing paleo-environments in New Zealand, such as changing climate, and extinction events. What happens to a community before, during, after an extinction event? So one needs to study communities in the context of biodiversity change. And also I was hoping to learn a little bit more about how best to measure biodiversity in the fossil record. There's many problems with measuring biodiversity. That is the number of organisms and the type of organisms that are preserved. These may include problems with sampling fossils. As you know from field trips, you don't always find nicely preserved fossils. Sometimes they're very poorly preserved. And these may also include aspects of taphonomy or paleo-environmental biases. Certain paleo-environments have more fossils than others. Okay, I did a lot of field work in New Zealand as part of this dissertation, which was nice. I got to go home and see my family and friends. And much of that work was along New Zealand's wonderful ocean beaches. And I was collecting fossils that looked much like that. Nice shell beds. Generally, the fossils could be picked out with just a knife and sieved and washed and sieved. And you could end up with quite nice specimens. Okay, so that's the dissertation experience. But we go back to this. I want to touch back onto the imagination side of things. I started off my undergrad education in biology, not geology. I took a few classes in geology at the time, but my dream was to become a marine biologist at that time. Dreams do change. So I eventually got into geology, but I always had this in the back of my mind, thinking about fossil assemblages in terms of how they might have looked when they were living. I was going through a range of paleo environments here, and you see many organisms that you don't commonly see in the fossil record. This is something to bear in mind. You've got sea anemones here, you've got some starfish, sponges, as well as shells, gastropods, bivalves. So that's something to think about. Now, early on I came across a book, this is actually when I was in high school, which I really loved, and it's by McKerrow, and I brought it along just to for folks to have a look at. But I really loved this book because it reconstructed paleo environments through time. And I just thought I'd show a few slides of some of McKerrow's reconstructions. These are Ordovician ones, and you might recognize a few taxa there. There's Leptina, Oniella, Catastrophia, tentaculites. So these are things you'd see in the coat formation and portrayed how they would have lived, perhaps. And that's neat. I hope next time people go out on one of the local field trips that you think about what the ecosystem might have looked like at the time. Brachiopods, trilobites living on the surface of the sediment, maybe cephalopods swimming through the overlying water column, maybe a few organisms also burrowing into the sediment below the water. Okay, here's a few more constructions. Triaphorus. Okay, and this book covers paleoenvironment.